to spiritual calisthenics.
Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. Today, on Tuesday, May 28th, we commemorate the fourth Tuesday after Pascha, the holy Hieromartyr Eutychius, bishop of Melitene, St. Nikitas, the bishop of Chalcedon, Helikonis the Martyr, St. Heladius, the Hieromartyr of the East, and St. Zacharias, the new martyr.
Concerning the Hieromartyr Eutychius, bishop of Melitene, all information concerning this martyr has been lost, except that he presented himself before the tyrants, mocked the idols, suffered many unspeakable torments, and was finally drowned in the sea. As a sharer of the way and successor of the throne of the apostles, O inspired of God, thou foundest discipline to be a means of ascent to divine vision. Wherefore, having rightly divided the word of truth, thou dost also contest for the faith, even unto blood, O Hieromartyr Eutychius, intercede, Christ our God, that our souls be saved.
The reading is from the Acts of the Apostles. In those days, Peter went down to the men sent by Cornelius to him, and said, I am the one you are looking for. What is the reason for your coming? And they said, Cornelius, a centurion, an upright and God-fearing man, who was well spoken of by the whole Jewish nation, was directed by a holy angel to send for you to come to his house, and to hear what you have to say. So he called them in to be his guest. The next day he rose and went off with them, and some of the brethren from Joppa accompanied him. And on the following day they entered Caesarea. Cornelius was expecting them, and had called together his kinsmen and close friends. When Peter entered, Cornelius met him and fell down at his feet and worshipped him. But Peter lifted him up, saying, Stand up! I too am a man. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many persons gathered. And he said to them, You yourselves know how unlawful it is for a Jew to associate with or to visit anyone of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without objection. I asked them, Why you sent for me? And Cornelius said, 4 days ago, about this hour, I was keeping the 9th hour of prayer in my house. And behold, a man stood before me in bright apparel, saying, Cornelius, your prayer has been heard, and your alms have been remembered before God. Send therefore to Joppa, and ask for Simon, who is called Peter. He is lodging in the house of Simon, a tanner by the seaside. So I sent to you at once, and you have been kind enough to come. Now, therefore, we are all here present in the sight of God, to hear all that you have been commanded by the Lord. Now, the verbiage of this is exactly the same. And this is on purpose because, again, these epistles would have been read out loud to the communities. So repetition is necessary to ingrain into our heads the facts of these stories, especially for this moment, because Cornelius is going to be the first Gentile convert. And this is also important because Caesarea was the major town at that time. Jerusalem would have been small, very small in comparison. So to review, Cornelius is not a Jew, but he prays. He gives alms. He supports the Jews. He is well thought of throughout the entire Jewish nation because he is a genuinely good man. And as such, God sees him and is seeing him fit to be the first convert of the Gentile nations. The reading according to the Gospel of St. John. At that time, Jesus went about in Galilee. He would not go about in Judea because the Jews sought to kill him. Now the Jews' feast of tabernacles was at hand. So his brothers said to him, Leave here and go to Judea, that your disciples might see the works that you are doing. Now for those of you that are wondering, what is the Feast of Tabernacles? The Feast of Tabernacles, also known as the Feast of Booths and Sukkot, is the 7th and last feast that the Lord commanded Israel to observe, and one of the 3 feasts that Jews were to observe each year by going to appear before the Lord your God in the place which he shall choose, from Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 16. The importance of the Feast of Tabernacles can be seen in how many places it is mentioned in Scripture. In the Bible, we see many important events that took place at the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. For one thing, it was at this time that Solomon's temple was dedicated to the Lord. The Feast of Tabernacles takes place on the 15th of the Hebrew month, Tishri. This was the 7th month on the Hebrew calendar and usually occurs in late September to mid-October. The feast begins 5 days after the Day of Atonement, and at the time the fall harvest had just been completed. It was a time of joyous celebration as the Israelites celebrated God's continued provision for them in the current harvest, and remembered his provision and protection during the 40 years in the wilderness. We find God's instructions for celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles in Leviticus 23, given at a point in history right after God had delivered Israel from the bondage of Egypt. The feast was to be celebrated each year on the 15th day of the 7th month and was to run for 7 days. Like all feasts, it begins with a holy convocation or Sabbath day when the Israelites were to stop working to set aside the day for worshiping God. On each day of the feast, they were to offer an offering made by fire to the Lord, and then after 7 days of feasting, again, the 8th day was to be a holy convocation when they were to cease from work and offer another sacrifice to God. Lasting 8 days, the Feast of Tabernacles begins and ends with a Sabbath day of rest. During the 8 days of the feast, the Israelites would dwell in booths or tabernacles that were made from the branches of trees. The Feast of Tabernacles, like all the feasts, was instituted by God as a way of reminding Israelites in every generation of the deliverance by God from Egypt. Of course, the feasts are also significant in that they foreshadow the work and the actions of the coming Messiah. Much of Jesus' public ministry took place in conjunction with the holy feasts set forth by God. It is also noted that the mystical 8th day, the resurrection, coincides with this as well, of deliverance. For no man works in secret if he seeks to be known openly. If you do these things, show yourself to the world, for even his brothers did not believe in him. Again, when we say brothers, what we're talking about here are the cousins and relations of Christ, not his actual blood brothers. Jesus said to them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is always here. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify of it that its works are evil. Go to the feast yourselves. I am not going up to the feast, for my time has not yet fully come." So saying, he remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had gone up to the feast, then he also went up, not publicly, but in private. The Jews were looking for him at the feast and saying, "Where is he?" And there was much muttering about him among the people. While some said, "He is a good man," others said, "No, he's leading the people astray." Yet for fear of the Jews, no one spoke openly of him. I hope that you've enjoyed today's spiritual calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.